I was 6 when my mom started dating David, and that's when Charlotte came into my life. She was 5. This tiny blonde thing with huge blue eyes who clung to her dad's leg whenever we had our awkward family meetups at Chuck E. Cheese or the park. Mom was trying so hard to make it work, buying us matching outfits and signing us up for the same dance classes. Charlotte was shy at first, but I took her under my wing like any good big sister would. I showed her how to braid friendship bracelets and taught her the hand-clapping games I'd learned at school. She followed me around like a little duckling. And honestly, it felt good to be the one in charge for once. When our parents got married 3 years later, Charlotte and I were already thick as thieves. The wedding was this beautiful garden ceremony where we got to be flower girls together, wearing matching lavender dresses that made us look like actual sisters. Everyone kept commenting on how sweet we were, how perfectly we'd blended into one happy family. Charlotte had grown out of her shyness by then, but she still looked up to me for everything. I was the one who helped her with homework, picked out her clothes for school pictures, and defended her when kids made fun of her lisp. I genuinely loved having a sister, even if she could be a little clingy sometimes. Middle school was when things started to shift slightly. Charlotte was developing her own personality, her own friend group, but we were still close. I was always a year ahead of her in everything, which felt natural since I was older. I got my period first, started wearing makeup first, had my first boyfriend first. Charlotte would ask me endless questions about everything, hanging on my every word like I was some kind of expert on life. I liked being her guide through the confusing world of adolescence, even when she got a little too interested in copying everything I did. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, right? High school changed everything, though I didn't realize it at first. Charlotte had hit her growth spurt and wasn't my little shadow anymore. She was developing her own style, making her own friends. And sometimes I'd catch her looking at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. But we were still sisters, still shared secrets and inside jokes. That is, until Noah transferred to our school junior year. The first time I saw Noah Matthews walk into AP History, I swear my heart actually stopped. He was tall and lean, with dark hair that fell across his forehead. And when he smiled at our teacher's introduction, I felt something electric shoot through my chest. He had this confident way of moving that made it seem like he'd been at our school forever, not like the nervous new kid he actually was. When Mrs. Peterson asked him to tell us about himself, his voice was deeper than I expected, with just a hint of an accent from wherever he'd moved from. I was completely gone from that first moment. Of course, I wasn't the only one who noticed. Half the girls in school were suddenly very interested in AP history, including Charlotte. I'd catch her staring at him in the hallway, and she started asking me casual questions about what classes he was taking, who he ate lunch with, whether he was dating anyone yet. The thing was, Noah seemed interested in me too. He'd find excuses to partner with me on projects, walk with me between classes. And I caught him looking at me more than once during lunch, but I couldn't do anything about it because of Charlotte. One night she came into my room with a serious expression and flopped down on my bed like she used to when we were kids. "We need to talk about Noah," she said, and my stomach dropped. I played dumb at first, but Charlotte wasn't buying it. She'd seen the way we looked at each other, the way he always seemed to find reasons to talk to me. "I really like him." "Emma," she said, using that vulnerable little voice that always made me want to protect her. "But I know you do too." I wanted to deny it, but the word stuck in my throat. Charlotte was my sister. She was younger, more fragile, and she'd always been the one who needed looking after. How could I compete with her for a guy, even if he clearly preferred me? It would be like kicking a puppy. So when she suggested we make a pact to not pursue him, to preserve our sisterhood over some boy, I agreed. It seemed like the noble thing to do, the mature choice that proved how much I valued our relationship. But God, it was torture. Noah kept trying to get closer to me, finding excuses to touch my arm during conversations, offering to drive me home after school events, asking if I wanted to study together. I had to keep turning him down, keep pretending I wasn't interested, all while watching Charlotte try her own clumsy attempts at flirting with him. She'd giggle too loudly at his jokes, find reasons to walk past his locker, and ask him obvious questions about homework she already understood. It was painful to watch, especially since Noah was always polite but clearly not interested. Senior year arrived, and prom was all anyone could talk about. I'd resigned myself to going with Jake Morrison, this sweet but boring guy from my calculus class who'd been asking me out for months. Charlotte was still holding out hope that Noah would ask her, dropping increasingly obvious hints about how much she loved dancing and how excited she was about prom season. I felt sorry for her, honestly. It was so obvious that Noah wasn't going to ask her, but I couldn't bring myself to burst her bubble. That's why I was so shocked when I overheard Melissa Grant telling her friends that Charlotte had asked Noah to prom herself. Just walked right up to him after chemistry class and asked if he wanted to go with her. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Not only had Charlotte broken our pact, but she'd done it in secret, without even telling me. All those conversations about protecting our sisterhood. All those times I'd turned Noah down to spare her feelings. And she'd been planning to stab me in the back the whole time. I confronted her the second she got home that afternoon. She was in her room, supposedly doing homework, but I could tell she'd been crying. "So," I said, standing in her doorway with my arms crossed, "want to tell me about your conversation with Noah today?" Charlotte's face went white, then red, then white again. She started stammering some excuse, but I cut her off. "Don't lie to me, Charlotte. I know you asked him to prom. So much for our pact." "Right." That's when she said the words that changed everything between us forever. "I only promised to spare your feelings because I thought Noah would pick me over you if he had to choose." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All this time, I'd been sacrificing my own happiness to protect hers, and she'd been planning to betray me from the beginning. She'd made that pact not out of sisterly love, but because she was trying to eliminate me as competition. The manipulation of it, the calculated coldness, made me feel sick. "You're unbelievable." I told her, "I've been turning him down for months because I thought it would hurt you. And you've been scheming behind my back this whole time." Charlotte tried to defend herself, saying she really did like him, that she deserved a chance to be happy too. But I was done listening. We got into a screaming match that brought our parents running upstairs, though neither of us explained what was really going on. Charlotte was crying and I was furious. And in the middle of all this chaos, the doorbell rang. It was Noah. He looked uncomfortable as hell, standing on our front porch while our parents tried to pretend they hadn't just heard us screaming at each other upstairs. "I was hoping I could talk to Emma," he said, and something in his voice made my heart race. We walked out to his car, away from the house and Charlotte's tear-stained face in the window. "So," he said, leaning against his hood, "Charlotte asked me to prom today." I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment. "Yeah, I told her no." He continued, watching my face carefully. "I told her I was hoping someone else would be available." The way he was looking at me made it hard to breathe. "Noah, I've been trying to ask you out for 2 years. Emma, every time I think I'm getting somewhere, you pull back. If you're not interested, just tell me and I'll leave you alone. But if there's a chance," he trailed off, running a hand through his hair. "I just need to know." Standing there in my driveway, with this boy I'd been crazy about for 2 years, I realized I was done sacrificing my happiness for someone who'd never planned to do the same for me. "I'm interested," I told him. "I've been interested this whole time." The smile that spread across his face was worth every bit of drama with Charlotte. He asked me to prom right there, and I said yes without hesitation. When we kissed for the first time, leaning against his car in the fading daylight, I felt like my life was finally beginning. Charlotte didn't take it well. She moved her stuff down to the basement guest room that night and barely spoke to me for the rest of senior year. Our parents kept asking what had happened between us, but neither of us explained. I wasn't about to air our dirty laundry, and Charlotte was probably too embarrassed to admit what she'd done. Let them think it was normal sister drama. I was too happy with Noah to care about Charlotte's sulking. College separated us physically, which was honestly a relief. Charlotte went to school across the country while Noah and I attended the same university 2 hours from home. We could finally have a normal relationship without the constant undercurrent of family drama. I threw myself into college life, making new friends who didn't know anything about my complicated family situation. For 4 years, I barely thought about Charlotte except during obligatory holiday visits where we maintained polite but distant conversation. After graduation, both Noah and I found jobs in the city, and Charlotte moved back home to be closer to her college boyfriend, Marcus. When she got engaged, I was genuinely happy for her. It seemed like we'd both moved on from the high school drama and found our own paths. I even went to her wedding, though I didn't bring Noah out of respect for how awkward that might be. Charlotte looked beautiful and seemed genuinely happy, and I thought maybe we could finally have a normal adult relationship. When Noah proposed to me 6 months later, I was over the moon. 7 years together, and he still made my heart race the way he had in high school. The proposal was perfect, romantic and intimate, and when I called to share the news with family, I made a decision that I thought was mature and healing. I invited Charlotte to be in my wedding. She seemed surprised but pleased when I asked. And for a few months during the planning process, it almost felt like we were sisters again. She was helpful with little details, offered opinions on flowers and music, and I started to think that maybe we could put the past behind us. Maybe we'd both grown up enough to move forward. I should have known better. The morning of my wedding, I was in the bridal suite getting my hair done when Charlotte showed up early. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her purse and asking if we could talk privately. I figured she wanted to give me some kind of sentimental sister speech. Maybe apologize for the years of distance between us. How fucking naive was I? Instead, she sat down on the edge of the bed and told me she had something difficult to share. I didn't want to tell you this, she said, putting on her best concerned sister voice, but I couldn't let you make this mistake. Then she launched into this elaborate story about how Noah had been messaging her for weeks, telling her he'd made a mistake, that he'd always wondered what would have happened if he'd chosen her instead of Mio. She claimed he'd suggested they run away together, that he'd only been going through with the wedding because it was too late to back out. She even pulled out her phone, supposedly to show me proof, though she kept the screen tilted away from me. I sat there listening to this bullshit story, watching Charlotte's face as she spun her lies, and I felt something cold and calculating settle in my chest. Did she really think I was stupid enough to believe this? Noah, who'd been obsessed with me for 7 years, who'd proposed after waiting patiently for me to be ready, who'd never given me a single reason to doubt his loyalty. The same Noah who'd rejected her in high school and barely acknowledged her existence since then. But instead of calling her out immediately, I decided to let her dig her own grave. Oh my God, I said, putting my hand to my chest like I was shocked. Are you serious? He really said that. Charlotte nodded eagerly, probably thrilled that her performance was working. She kept embellishing the story, adding details about secret phone calls and romantic messages, painting herself as the reluctant other woman who just couldn't help falling for my fiancé. It was such obvious bullshit that I almost laughed. Charlotte, I said, pulling out my own phone. This is really serious. I think Marcus should know about this. Don't you? I mean, if Noah's been pursuing you, your husband deserves to know. The color drained from Charlotte's face. Emma, I don't think that's... But I was already dialing Marcus's number and putting the call on speaker. When he answered, sounding cheerful and unsuspecting, I felt a surge of vindictive satisfaction. Marcus. Hi, it's Emma. I'm here with Charlotte. And she just told me something really disturbing. She says Noah's been trying to have an affair with her. I thought you should hear this directly from her. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Then Marcus's voice, confused and sharp. What? Charlotte. What is she talking about? Charlotte was staring at me with pure panic in her eyes, finally realizing the trap she'd walked into. Marcus. This isn't... She was trying to ruin my marriage, I said calmly into the phone. On my wedding day, she made up a story about Noah wanting to run away with her, trying to convince me not to go through with the ceremony. Charlotte. Marcus's voice was deadly quiet now. Is this true? Charlotte was crying now, ugly tears that smeared her makeup. I thought, Emma, please. But I wasn't feeling merciful. I was feeling vindicated. After years of Charlotte playing the victim, of her manipulating situations to her advantage, she'd finally been caught red-handed. I'm just giving her a taste of her own medicine. Marcus, she's been pulling stunts like this since high school. The conversation devolved quickly from there. Marcus was shouting. Charlotte was sobbing. And my bridesmaids were staring at the whole scene with their mouths hanging open. Eventually, Marcus hung up, and Charlotte grabbed her purse and ran out of the room. 20 minutes later, I watched from the window as she and Marcus had a screaming match in the hotel parking lot before driving away separately. My wedding was perfect. Noah and I laughed about Charlotte's pathetic sabotage attempt during our first dance, and my bridesmaids made sure she didn't try to sneak back into the reception. It felt like justice. Honestly, after all the years of her games and manipulation, she'd finally faced consequences for her actions. The fallout came quickly. Within a week, Marcus had filed for divorce and was threatening to call the police if Charlotte didn't move out immediately. He called my parents, screaming about what their daughter had done, demanding they control her. And somehow, in the twisted logic that had always governed my family, this became my fault. You should have handled this privately. My mother told me over the phone. You destroyed her marriage by calling her husband. She tried to destroy mine first, I pointed out. But they weren't interested in hearing logic. Charlotte was the victim here. The poor little sister, whose mean older sister, had ruined her life. Never mind that she'd brought it entirely on herself. They cut contact with me, choosing Charlotte's version of events over the truth. Fine. I had Noah, I had my real friends, and I had a marriage that Charlotte's pathetic attempt at sabotage had only made stronger. Let them deal with her drama and her divorce mess. The text started during our honeymoon. My mother guilt-tripping me about Charlotte having to move back in with them, about how devastated she was, about how I should apologize for overreacting. I deleted every message without responding. I wasn't going to apologize for defending myself against Charlotte's manipulation. It took 6 months for my parents to come to their senses. 6 months of dealing with Charlotte's post-divorce breakdown, her constant drama, her inability to take responsibility for her own actions. When they finally reached out to suggest dinner, I could hear the exhaustion in my mother's voice. We made some bad choices, she admitted over appetizers, not quite meeting my eyes. We got caught up in Charlotte's divorce and didn't see the situation clearly. I accepted their apology graciously, though I didn't offer one in return. I hadn't done anything wrong. I'd simply refused to let Charlotte destroy my happiness the way she'd tried to destroy everything else good in my life. Charlotte's still living with our parents, still playing the victim, still acting like her divorce was something that happened to her rather than something she caused. She's tried reaching out a few times through mutual friends, but I'm done with her games. Some people never learn, never change, never take responsibility for their actions. I'm happily married to the man she tried to steal from me twice, living the life she tried to sabotage, surrounded by people who actually support me instead of enabling toxic behavior. Meanwhile, she's a divorced woman in her 20s, living in her childhood bedroom, dealing with the consequences of her own choices. Sometimes I wonder if she's learned anything from all this, if she ever looks back and realizes that her problems are largely self-created. But honestly, I don't spend much time thinking about Charlotte anymore. She made her bed with years of manipulation and betrayal, and now she gets to lie in it. I'm too busy being happy to waste energy on her drama. The best revenge, they say, is living well, and I'm living very, very well.